Pat's kind of deceptive. He looks, like a nice gentleman. He's got his jacket on. He's educated. He's well spoken. But Pat Quinn, make no mistake, is an activist. He has made change happen for Illinois, lasting change. He used a voter initiated petition drive and binding referendum to reduce the size of the Illinois House of Representatives. That's before he was governor. While he was governor, I can't wrap my head around this, he provided voters with the power to recall a sitting governor. Risky move, but he went there. Before Obergefell versus Hodges, he legalized same-sex marriage and civil unions in Illinois. He expanded access to health care with the Affordable Care Act, and he abolished the death penalty in Illinois. So it's safe to say that Pat Quinn, with his activism, has literally saved lives. And that's why it gives me such pleasure to introduce a committed activist, your former governor, Pat Quinn.
Well, thank you very much. It's great to see everyone here and also online. What a terrific turnout here on a Saturday in February. Matter of fact, this coming week, I've learned, is the 105th anniversary of the League of Women Voters. How about it? February 14th, I guess, 1920, Valentine's Day. And we sent a Valentine across America on how important it is, as Becky just spoke, to have a democracy in America and in every single state. And now more than ever, we've got to stand up for democracy. When I drove in here and I parked my car, I got right behind a car with a bumper sticker and it said, "Vote democracy." That's really what the league is all about. Democracy is not a spectator sport. It's everybody in and nobody left out. And that's why I was very grateful for the invitation today. I want to thank Kathy Cortez and Becky for inviting me. I met with them last summer and we talked a little bit about different things we could do to improve our democracy, especially here in Illinois. And before I get going, I want to salute someone who's a living example of democracy, who knows how to knock on doors and talk to people face to face, running for office. She worked for me when I was state treasurer, and that's Maria Peterson. Maria, why don't you stand up here? Member of the League of Women Voters. You know, I think it is important that we have people that do have the courage to stand up when necessary to make sure that our democracy is going in the right direction. And my mother, who passed away 10 years ago, as a matter of fact, I grew up in DuPage County, not too far from here in Hinsdale. And my mom was born in 1917. So when she was born, women didn't have the right to vote in our country at a federal election. Illinois, by the way, had passed a law that allowed women to vote in a state election in Illinois. There was a governor, Edward Fitzgerald Dunn, who was elected in 1912. He campaigned on the importance of women's suffrage, making sure that women had their voice heard at the ballot box. So Illinois had already done it, but it didn't happen at the federal level until 1920, when my mother was 3 years old. My mother got to be 98 years old, pretty good run. And she believed, like we just heard from Becky, that you can't just be a spectator. You've got to roll up your sleeves and volunteer and get involved in causes you believe in. You know, the heart of America, the heart of Illinois, is a heart of a volunteer. And there was a woman who was around when my mom was born, a very important woman from Illinois. Her name was Jane Addams, and she was the first American to be awarded the Nobel Peace Prize, Jane Addams. And when I was, I think it was lieutenant governor, I looked around and there was not one road in Illinois named after a woman. We had a lot of other roads named after very important men, but not one was named after a woman. and we had something called the Northwest Tollway. Northwest Tollway, not a very uh, imaginative name. And I spoke to a state representative and I said, how about sponsoring a bill that would rename the Northwest Tollway to the Jane Addams Tollway? Because Jane Addams came from Rockford, Illinois, near Rockford. And she came obviously to Chicago and made history, especially with respect to helping people who came from another country, an immigrant to our state of Illinois, Chicago, Hull House. And Jane Addams deserved recognition and never being forgotten. And so this state representative, Barbara Curry, sponsored the bill, passed into law. That's how we got the Jane Addams Tollway, because somebody had an idea. I know that guy, fellow by the name of Pat Quinn, but sometimes that's what's required if we're going to change things. So as you go down to Springfield this year and you have an idea, you want to be, friendly, always friendly, but be progressive and aggressive. Can do when they band together, not for profit, for causes they believe in. That's what the league is all about. That's what democracy is all about. Matter of fact, Jane Addams, one of her very famous quotes was, the cure for the ills of democracy is more democracy. And that's what we've got to do here in our state. As you may know, there's a big trial going on. The jury is now sequestered and making its decision on a verdict. But I can tell you from my experience as not only state treasurer and lieutenant governor, but I was governor for 6 years. When I took the oath of office on the 29th of January of 2009, about 16 years ago, it was a tough time for our state. We had one governor in jail, another governor headed to jail. Matter of fact, when I was governor, both of them were in jail at the same time. And it clearly underlined the importance of reform in our state, real reform, not, pastel reform, things we had to do to straighten out the corruption in Illinois. And my first act in my first day after taking the oath of office was to set up an Illinois Reform Commission that I named. These were not men and women who were politicians. These were folks from different walks of life and different parts of our state who were committed to straightening things out and proposing reforms that Illinois needed. That was in 2009. A number of those reforms were passed to strengthen the Freedom of Information Act, to put limits for the first time ever on campaign donations in Illinois, and all kinds of other reforms. Frankly, we didn't get enough reforms passed. I had to deal with the Speaker of the House, Mike Madigan, and President of the Senate, and they weren't, frankly, all that interested in reform. But we did get some things done. And again, when you go down to Springfield this year, you're not going to always get everything you want, but you want to make sure you get something. And so that's what happened back in 2009 with the Illinois Reform Commission. But it sort of underlined to me that we need to have this on a regular basis. And I've told Governor Pritzker, this is what we should have when this verdict comes down. No matter what, whether the defendants are guilty or not, the things that have come out in that trial in Chicago at the federal building indicate there are a lot of shady practices in our state. Whether you call them illegal and that sends somebody to jail or not, they still aren't right. And that's why in Illinois, we've got to do something about it. And as Becky mentioned, I believe in the power of initiative and referendum. Jane Addams was there early on in our state promoting the power of voters by petition and binding referendum to reform things. Oftentimes, the insiders, the incumbents, well, they're not going to regulate themselves. It's we, the people, that have to do that. And matter of fact, in 1976, 50 years ago next year, we actually got signatures on a petition. It's called the Political Honesty Initiative, We got 635,138 signatures, the all-time record in Illinois. And it was on behalf of 3 constitutional amendments to straighten things out in Illinois. One of them dealt with conflict of interest voting by legislators. Another one dealt with stopping double dipping by politicians. And the third one was ending a practice called advance pay. Believe it or not, for 100 years, Illinois legislators would collect their entire annual pay on the first day of office before they did any work. They'd get sworn in and they'd run over to the state treasurer's office and collect a whole year's paycheck. Well, alas, some of the legislators got, believe it or not, convicted of felonies and removed from office, and they wouldn't give their advance pay back. Some retired early, wouldn't give their money back. And they said, a friend of mine was a sponsor of the bill. To end advance pay, he put it in. It got defeated by 17-3 in committee. And the fellow who sponsored the bill, his nickname for the rest of his political career was Bad Bill Buyers. That's a bad bill, buyers. We don't want to end advance pay. But with a petition drive, where people for the first time learned about this practice, everyday people, taxpayers, they signed all those signatures, 635,000. We filed them in Springfield. They said you had to file them all in one book. So we had a book that was 20 feet long, tied together with airplane cable. It was like a canoe. We reeled it in. And believe it or not, after we did that, the legislature passed a law that they had defeated 17-3 in committee. They passed a law ending advance pay for themselves, showing the power of petition and showing what everyday people could do when they're fired up, ready to go. Now, when that happened, I happened to be in the gallery of the House of Representatives after they passed the law, and one representative who thought it was a joke, I guess, he saw me up in the gallery and he said, "Oh, by the way, we have the Cub Scouts from Carbondale here," and everybody clapped. "And we have the 4-H Club from Macomb, Illinois." Everybody clapped, legislators. And then one more, there's that Pat Quinn up there in the gallery. And they stood up and booed for 3 minutes. A standing bovation, led by a fellow by the name of Mike Madigan, who was a speaker at the time. So the point of the matter is, we the people have to understand it's our government. And I told Madigan and Cullerton when I was the governor, we need to have an ethics initiative in Illinois. Other states have it, Missouri and Ohio, Michigan, and many others. But we don't have a power where voters can pass ethics measures for those in the legislature by petition and binding referendum, kind of going around the insiders. So that's one thing I am committed to this year. I hope the league takes a good look at it. Maurice West, who I talked to this week, he's from Rockford, and he sponsored this proposal, a very courageous man. And we need to get this going in our state. And I think this verdict that'll come down in Chicago regarding the former Speaker of the House may give us momentum. And I really feel that giving voters the right by initiative to pass long overdue ethics reforms is something that is important to everybody in Illinois. We have to deal with the corruption tax, the tax that everyday people work hard, raise kids, pay their taxes, shouldn't have to have the situation in Illinois is seen as a national laughingstock because of corruption in government. So I'm committed to that. I also believe, as you can tell, in petition passing, the right of being able to circulate petitions. When we put the referendum on the ballot in 1980, it was called the Cutback Amendment, and the league was a partner with our petition drive. And we got those signatures. In the middle of our petition drive, believe it or not, the insiders in the legislature decided to change petition law in Illinois, making it very hard to get signatures. If you weren't the same blood type of somebody who were trying to get a signature from, it wouldn't count. It wasn't as bad as that, but it was pretty close. It was a very restrictive law on people circulating petitions in our state. And we filed our petitions, and the people who didn't want the referendum on the ballot in 1980, the cutback amendment, said, well, sorry for you guys. You didn't comply with our anti-petition law. You can't be on the ballot. And the State Board of Elections actually said, well, you're right. They're off the ballot. So we had to go to court, Supreme Court in Illinois. The Legal Women Voters was part of this. Unless there's a digital option. And this representative in Maryland proposed electronic petition passing, digital petition passing. This is not a foreign idea. Matter of fact, during the COVID, a number of states, New Jersey, uh, uh, Virginia, Maryland itself, Massachusetts, all adopted a system where people, if they wanted to, they could still do it the kind of conventional way of getting signatures, wet ink on a piece of paper. But if they wanted to do it digitally, that was sufficient. And that has caught on. Arizona, you can do that for any candidate. And it seems to me we ought to think about that in Illinois. The League of Women Voters in Maryland endorsed electronic or digital petition passing for candidates and issues. And that's a good issue here in Illinois. For too long, people who have disabilities, and I've represented men and women who have serious disabilities, they want to fully participate. One of my clients is very active, a leader in the blind community. He's very facile with his computer. He has a huge number of blind people who are in his network, but he cannot himself sign digitally a petition for a candidate or an issue, and he can't circulate that petition with other folks in his blind network. So we have to work on that. I was just recently with the Access for Living people leading a disability group in Illinois, and they're interested in this. And this is something that the League of Women Voters ought to look at in Illinois. Everybody in, nobody left out. Participating is not just voting, but it's also what happens when we come to vote. Do we petition a candidate onto the ballot, or do we petition an important issue onto the ballot? When I was outside coming in here, I know you've worked very hard on redistricting reform, and initiatives have been tried in that state, in this our state. I think we can do something in the future by petition and binding referendum, but we want to make sure that everybody is included in signing or circulating a petition at the statewide level. Because in the case that League of Women Voters was involved in 1980, the Illinois Supreme Court made it crystal clear that the right of petition passing is fundamental. It's subject to strict scrutiny. Legislators cannot just pass any old law that they want to use to keep things off the ballot and candidates off the ballot. They've got to understand that this right that's in our First Amendment of the federal Constitution, it's in our Illinois Constitution, is really the voice of the people. So I want to thank you today for inviting me to speak. I believe in direct democracy and the opportunity of everybody banding together. As Margaret Mead said many, many years ago, the most powerful force in life is when thoughtful, committed people band together for causes they believe in. And I believe in the cause of initiative and referendum and the power of democracy. That's how we're going to make the will of the people the law of the land. Thank you very much.